So
Yeah,
understanding.
yeah, they're so patient with us, honestly. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. So today, first of all, we have a special guest.
Mhm.
Kit Kat himself has joined us, so we're in good company.
The real
And
organizer of these book clubs.
yeah,
Mr. Kit
he
Kat.
is. He is. He's the mastermind behind it all. So
Yes.
yeah, he should be here.
Yeah.
And we're here to discuss our September book. Fuck, it's been a long time. My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson. And I know we have different opinions about this book because I saw your review. So I
Yeah.
saw that you liked it. And yeah, it just wasn't my favorite. So I'm going to need you to convince me otherwise or just like tell me why you loved
Okay.
it. So
So
you
I
gave
would.
it 5 stars, right?
It's like a 4.5, but I round
Okay.
up. Like
Okay.
so I was even like going over my tabs in this book and
Yeah.
my notes, and I'm still like, this book is still a masterpiece. Like everything about it is so good.
Yeah.
Or just so, it's not like one of those books where um like, at least in my opinion, like it's not one of those books where it's like, I don't think it's not my favorite, and it's not like a book I loved reading, but I
Mhm.
just think it was so brilliant that I really deeply appreciate it, and for that
Mhm.
it's 5 stars.
Okay.
But it's not like one of those books where I was like, yeah, I loved every second reading it, and
Yeah.
this like my favorite book ever. um so I loved the writing. I thought the characterization of Trey, our main character, he was just such an interesting character, and kind
Mhm.
of seeing like his worlds colliding in different ways, and how he, I don't know, I thought that was really interesting. There were so many really like philosophical and beautiful quotes that, or just concepts also being introduced, like what winning means, what it means for a government to like I don't, what it means for or what it looks like when a government is like not actively not protecting its
Mhm.
people. um and like just also the history that he incorporated into everything
Mhm.
is just like, I have so little knowledge of it, and I thought that it was just interesting to read a book with these big historical characters that we've always
Mhm.
known of, or like some of them I've known of, others were new, and then think of them as like normal people that you're friends with, that like
Mhm.
make flaws or have flaws and make mistakes, but also
Mhm.
like stand for this really important issue. Um, so there's a lot we can dive into, but I loved it. I thought it was
Yeah.
amazing.
I honestly, the last point that you were mentioning was what I was kind of taken back by the book
Right?
because it was just too much sometimes. I felt like maybe sometimes he was just including a little character in a sentence or just randomly appearing out of nowhere and just having like a little spotlight just to kind of him being there, you know?
Yeah.
It was just sometimes I felt like the history was too pushed and too forced into the story, at least mostly in the beginning. And I also don't like footnotes at all in
Okay.
books. So, like, the fact that sometimes it was like half the page just footnotes on like a person that appeared, like their history and what they did, it was interesting, but it kind of took me out of the story a lot of times.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't supposed to do that. So I felt like he should have taken, like, in my opinion, he should have taken out some of the like less important references to historical figures or events, and just focus on the ones that are more like relevant to the story. Because yeah, it kind of took me out of the story sometimes reading the footnotes and then going back to the
Yeah.
narrative. It was just a lot, you know. So that's one of the things that I struggled with this book. And yeah, I guess it was all throughout it that it was just also I did understand some plot lines, but I would have maybe like the plot line, for example, with his apartment, with like going against Fred Trump. Um, I did understand that it was relevant to some other parts of the story, but I just didn't really like it. So yeah, to me it was a 3 or a 3.5 stars, so I didn't hate it, obviously, and I do understand all the relevance to the book and why it's, I don't know if your book has this, but the New York Times most notable books of 2022, yeah, it has like a little
Oh,
thing here, yeah. So I do understand why it's so highly praised, but it's just, I don't know. I don't know if it was the timing. I don't know what it was, but it just didn't click with me on some things.
yeah.
But yeah, also I did tab a lot of things. I didn't underline the things that I wanted to tab though, because that's something I do a lot. And since I read this in September, I don't really know what I was tabbing. So that's something.
Fine.
Very professional of me to
Yes.
do that, but it's fine. I'm just a mess right now. So, so if you want to start with your notes, maybe they're a little bit more relevant than mine. Also, hi Anna, how are you?
Hello.
This is a
Um,
very ungodly hour for a live show. We're so sorry about that, by the way. Well,
that's
it's more
true.
ungodly for you, actually, but yeah.
It is a little bit, but like this is also like kind of the start of the workday, quote unquote. So it's like, well, I was gonna be up anyways, so let's just like
True. Yeah, true.
kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
Um, so but going back to what you said about the footnotes, like
Mhm.
I think like just the presence of footnotes also like inherently takes you out of the story because like
Mhm. Yeah.
it's yeah, obviously you have to stop what you're doing to read the footnote, which provides this context for like then it's up to you to determine like when you want to get that context.
Mhm.
Um, so it's like inherently just like abrasive.
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
but
It kind of reminded me, I never read those books, but people would say a lot about Jake Kristoff's books. What was it called? The
never
that
mind.
series that he wrote. Yeah. And people were always complaining that the footnotes were long.
Yeah,
And yeah, I guess it depends. Like some people do like that. But
yeah,
for me, it just, yeah, it takes me out of the story. And obviously I could just like skip it and not read the footnotes and then read it afterwards or something, just like kind of like reading a Wikipedia page or something. But at the same time, the point of the story is to have all the historical context and kind of to make you immerse in the story,
yeah.
and the actual like story, the history that happened. So yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know. I didn't know what to do because it was taking me out of the story, but also it was important to the history and to know all of that. So yeah, yeah, that was my
Like
struggle.
so, I got over the Cliff Notes. Like I read them no problem.
Mhm.
And one of the things I liked about the Cliff Notes and like the introduction of like all of these historical figures was that it made it appear as though, and I feel like this was kind of it, like where everybody did kind of know everybody. Like once you kind of
Mhm.
stepped into that world of like the queer or specifically like the gay like black community
Mhm.
and like how that an activist so it was like as soon as you start talking about one person like this person comes up and this person comes up and it's like this it really is like a small knit community
Mhm.
of real flawed people just trying to get basic human rights.
Yeah.
um so like in that way it was like breaking a wall in my mind of like not idolizing but always thinking of these people as just historical figures and not
Mhm.
real. um so that was like something that I thought was really cool about and effective about the Cliff Notes.
Mhm.
um I also this book to me is like quintessential 20 something figuring out what to do with his life.
Yeah. You were also talking about Trey, and I didn't like his character, but I also loved him at the same time
Yeah,
because like the way he acted was very like just abrasive to me. I was just like, stop saying that, stop doing that. But at the same time, I really loved seeing his progression throughout the book of
Yeah.
him like realizing, oh, I can do stuff that actually matters. And yeah, I can help my community. And I really liked seeing his progression. But yeah, all throughout the story, I was just mad at him for doing the
Yeah.
things he did. I was just like, Trey, stop. So yeah, he was a flawed character, but I also liked seeing how flawed he was.
It was so interesting to see him like learn to put himself first
Hmm.
and to like grow into himself and his confidence as a
Hmm.
person. And like I like how he was telling the story kind of as um like he was telling the story to like an older version of Trey was telling the story to us, and like the narrator like was able to see like younger Trey's like cockiness or like his immaturity or just like wish the things that he wished he knew at that time and like how he would have acted differently if he had known that. But like holding that space to be like, yeah, I was wrong here, but like I did the best with what I knew at the time. Like that duality I think is like so interesting and like just
Hmm.
because it's all like having love and compassion for your younger self and but like also still holding yourself like accountable. So I feel like that was really cool to see. Um and I thought like the parallels between Trey's brother and how he like kind of abandoned him, if you want to put it that way. Like that's kind of I'm not going to indict him, you know, like he did the best he could with what he knew.
Hmm.
And then so like how Trey kind of always like worded that in his mind as like he abandoned his brother. And what happened this how that paralleled with Gregory, like his best friend, and how
Hmm.
he kind of abandoned him too at the end by choosing himself. Like in both times, in both scenarios, he chose himself.
Yeah.
And he just learned to be okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think that first experience with his brother, he chose himself, but he regretted it, obviously, because he was just, yeah, my brother probably got lost, got whatever because of me, because I chose myself. And then at the end, especially because with, I think it was the conversation with his mother where she's like pointing out all of these scenarios that could have happened to his brother. And they're like, we're never going to know, but it happened. So let's just move on. Um, then when at the end he chose himself over Gregory, it was just, I can choose myself. And it was just like he put all everyone else over himself his whole life because of what happened to his brother. But then it was just like, no, I just need to live
Yeah.
by myself. I don't have this experience. I don't need to have this experience dictate the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did understand that parallel. I really like that part of the story of the whole thing with his brother, and we kind of got that he was kind of estranged from his family and he ran away from something, but we didn't know what. And when we found out, I was just like, oh, really?
Yeah.
I was shocked, honestly. But he
I
was a kid, like,
yeah, he was a kid. And what I think
mhm,
is so interesting like about the parallel is that like when he ran away from his brother, he chose survival, right? It was a
mhm,
situation he basically it was a decision he had to make in order to survive.
mhm,
But when he runs away from Gregory, like no one has a gun to his head. So it's like it's not like he's going to face immediate death or violence if he stays there. It's just
mhm,
that he can think clearly and he like has he can go if he wants to.
mhm,
And now he's finally like, okay, I can leave my brother and still be a good person, still like make
mhm.
the best decision for me. So I think like that was just like once I saw that happen at the end of the story, and I was like, that was so well set up, like just
Yeah.
masterpiece. And I also like I loved seeing like the inclusion of like intersectionality and how Trey was a gay black man.
Mhm.
He came from so much wealth privilege.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And like it really it made him kind of like an outsider or different from other people like Gregory, who had nothing when
Mhm.
like was making these decisions because he was constantly like choosing have a gun to his head choosing survival.
Mhm.
So it oh I loved it. I loved it. And like I like seeing him get called out for like his economic privilege and like not really being aware of that.
Yeah.
Um and how like the intersectionality of different social.
Yeah, because he like in his mind he was like, no, but I'm choosing to
Yeah.
live life on my own without my parents. But like his whole upbringing, he didn't have to worry about that. He didn't have
Yeah.
to worry about money and education and nothing of the sort. And even the situation with his brother, if that were a poor family, it wouldn't be dealt like that probably. And yeah, he thought that his decision to run away and just live life on his own would kind of erase all of his past. And yeah, it just doesn't work like that, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. So he really had to have like a reckoning with like accepting his
Mhm.
past.
Yeah.
And it's I wonder if that's like why he um was so okay like being around such like horrific sights of like men who are like a couple days away from death because of how
Mhm.
sick they are. Like that was have you read a lot of books or any books about like the AIDS epidemic and like fiction about it?
um I don't think so. I think I've seen more like movies and TV shows about
Okay.
that topic. I've seen a TV show, I don't know if you've seen it, which is called It's a Sin,
Mhm.
which is about the AIDS epidemic, I think in the UK. Um, or is it in New York? I don't remember anymore. But I saw that TV show and I really liked it. And it's also very hard to watch, but
Yeah.
it's obviously fictional, but it's based in real experiences probably. But yeah, books, I don't think so. I think maybe this was the first. I've read books about people with AIDS, but like contemporary books.
Okay.
So it's not the same thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think this was the first one.
I've read like one other book, um, but it was a young adult book and it was about I forget what it was called. But it was about like the main character who was a teenager and like one of his friends' uncles died from AIDS.
Hmm.
And he was really close to that uncle. Um, because the uncle was kind of like a mentor to him.
Mhm.
So that was like my first experience reading it as a fiction book.
Mhm.
Um, so I just think it's interesting because it's like wasn't that long ago, such a
Yeah.
big part of history, and now there's like a missing gap in of like I guess like gay people who should be like 60 or
Yeah.
something. There's
Mhm.
just
Yeah,
many of
probably
them survive.
60.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Also, I think there was, yeah, it's just a small like detail of the story, but One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston also has a little
oh
part about AIDS because also her uncle, like the main character's uncle, um this is kind of a spoiler. Maybe I shouldn't say this. Well, now it's said. But yeah, in that story, there's also a little bit about AIDS. Um, yeah, I think other than that, I haven't read any other book. I feel like I have, but now I just nothing comes to mind. So
yeah.
yeah.
It like it just so I read this book in October. I was already late.
Yeah.
But I
That's
was reading this book like during the first weeks or a couple days of um like the attacks in Palestine.
mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting to hear like um to see like the connections between like a minority group trying to get a majority group to humanize them and empathize with them and want to help them.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were so many parallels and like why like all like oppression is connected. Um
Yeah.
it like with just having that in
It's
like
all
the back
about
of my mind.
power,
Yeah, it's all about
money.
power, like white supremacy and colonialism, and it's all interconnected. And
Mhm,
like no one is free until everyone is free. Like you see how it's like all linked and like
mhm,
it. So that was in the back of my mind, and I thought that was just so interesting because it's like this like here they were having the same issues of like trying to be humanized and trying to get people to care and trying to get the government to like do something even though the government knows what's happening.
mhm,
It's just like please help us. And but it's interesting seeing it happen or like reading it happen without technology as we know it.
mhm.
And so I thought that was a really interesting like aspect of it too because like reading it when I did, like it's just like I could not help but make those comparisons and just
Yeah,
like connect the social issues.
yeah.
So, like there was actually one quote that was really like really scary, and it was talking about like the part where Trey goes to join one of like it's on 178.
Oh.
He goes to join like one of those resistance groups and they're like like teaching him how to be tortured or like how to withstand being tortured.
Mhm,
And the leader of this group is explaining like why you have to let cops kick you and abuse you and like the purpose of that. And um it's just crazy now because now we see that all the time um with on phones like getting recorded.
mhm,
And she goes, if you fight, it will legitimize the unchecked savagery of your enemies. You
mhm,
must remember that your victory comes from unmasking the senseless brutality that the government chooses to sanction against you, a collection of nonviolent demonstrators. The point is to let your bruised and bloodied bodies serve as evidence that the government means to kill you. If you so much as protest its bigoted policies.
mhm.
And that is just so interesting because like the same thing is like happening now, but it's entirely dependent on like a society that is willing to empathize
Yeah.
with your group.
Mhm.
So I thought that was it was really like powerful connections.
Yeah. Actually I didn't remember that the title was in the book.
I love that.
And yeah, and especially like I don't know, I read this but I didn't connect it to the title for some reason. But yeah, what you were saying, now we're kind of like dependent on the photographic and video evidence
Yes.
to kind of prove it. But back then, obviously, they didn't have that. So it would just be like, look at me and look what they did to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
believe and
didn't.
try and believe like just believe me. I'm
Mhm,
human. But like
mhm.
now we have that proof and it's like so that much easier to
Oh,
believe
yeah.
them. But they're still
Mhm.
like we know yeah, we still doesn't convince everyone still.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we're also getting to a point where images and videos can be fabricated as
Ugh,
well. So there's also that thin line of like, is it real? Should I believe this?
yeah.
Which sucks. We're getting to that threshold, but because this should help us, obviously,
Yeah.
and it's starting to not help anymore. So great. But do you have any more like quotes and parts that you
Yeah.
would like to highlight?
So one of the quotes I liked was about winning.
Hmm.
It's on 107.
Yeah.
And Trey says winning rarely changes how people perceive us and almost never soothes our insecurities. Winning, as most of us conceive it, is external and public. I didn't yet know that the most rewarding activities of my life would be those done in secret.
Yeah.
Isn't that like really beautiful?
It is because yeah, winning is for the other people to see.
Yeah,
Um
it's for
I
them
guess
to give you validation.
yeah, because like winning for ourselves, I guess it has other words and connotations, like it's just like self-fulfillment maybe,
Yeah.
but we don't call it as winning. If we do something in secret and no one knows, but it is still something worthy of respect, even from ourselves. So yeah, it's an interesting perspective. I never thought of that. That winning is for other people to see and validate.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And like I feel like that was like what one of the seeds of like um when you like like for Trey to realize that, that was like he started becoming a lot more confident
Hmm.
and okay with himself,
Yeah.
and like confident with his own opinion, and like he wants to take in what the people around him think, and he wants to
Yeah.
consider it, but like ultimately what he can trust his own opinions now and his
Mhm.
gut. And that's that's the epitome of being in your 20s.
Yeah, it is. Because maybe I'm just assuming, but maybe his parents were like, well, they were public figures, right? Or what?
Yeah,
So obviously he got the idea of winning to show yourself from his parents as well.
yeah,
So it makes sense that, yeah, once he's stripped of that, he's like, how do I win?
yeah.
So yeah, it makes sense. And it's an interesting perspective. Yeah.
The next quote that I underlined has to do with his mother. It's on
Oh,
page 204. We really haven't talked about her too much.
yeah, true. Um, I
Um,
really like that part, like I said before, where she's like, oh, this happened to your brother, but this could also happen, and this maybe happened. And that part, because at first I was reading it and she said the first thing, I don't know what it was, but I was like, oh, that's what happened. And then I continued reading and I was like, oh, okay, this is all just hypotheticals.
yeah,
And yeah, I
which
thought that was really well done.
like coming up with those hypotheticals is like truly not knowing is could be worse than knowing, because like there's an endless amount of scenarios you can come up with and
Hmm.
constantly play in your mind, and she's as a mother is tortured by that.
Yeah, yeah. It's I honestly like, yes, the world is big, but I'm always like, how do we not know how some people, like where some people are? Like it's so crazy. Like I just feel so small like in those moments where I'm like, where's
Yeah.
Madame McCain? Like where is she? We don't
Yeah.
know. We will never know probably, and it's so scary. Like anyway, I'm already a mess. I don't want to become more of a mess, so let's move on.
Well, the
Um,
quote is him saying, "We were designed to be at odds. She was always clad in artifice, and I longed to strip naked." I thought that
hmm,
was like so introspective. It's just a way of being like, yeah, like we're fundamentally different.
yeah. What does it mean, clad?
Um,
Like
like,
like enrobed? Like
like
just maybe
I
I
take it
can.
as um, like kind of confined and like uptight. Like,
Yeah, clothed, garbed, customed. Okay, clad. Okay, so like she's like dressed, I guess.
she's like
Clothed.
always wearing armor, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
And he's like, I just want to be vulnerable, but like they have like their default settings are two diametrically opposed
Hmm.
like ways.
Hmm.
And just being like being able to look at your mother and just be like, oh, we're just fundamentally different. Like that, powerful. That's so
Hmm.
beautiful.
Hmm. And that's also something that happens in your 20s.
Moving on.
I know it well. It's just accepting, like, yeah, we're different. She's not going to change. I'm not going to change. So let's just agree on disagree,
Yeah.
which sometimes sucks, but it is what it is.
Yeah. It's also like that comfortability with yourself to be like, I can't fix this,
Hmm.
but like I can control how I react to it.
Yeah.
So beautiful pick.
Yeah. Um, what else?
um,
Also, we haven't talked about Angie as
I
well.
know.
She was a character.
Yeah.
No, she was funny. I liked her. I really wasn't expecting that whole part about Angie and the whole thing that she was operating, I guess, to be such a big part of the story. At first, I thought it was just because up to that point, all of the chapters were almost contained.
Hmm.
So, for example, the part about the Fred Trump thing with the apartments, it was just kind of one chapter, and it was just kind of like that. But then once I guess Trey found out that he could do more, and he met Angie and all of that, it just kind of like expanded the story, which I liked. I felt like the first few chapters were a bit okay to me. I know it was setting up a lot of things
Yeah.
for the rest of the story, but still, I was just kind of like, what is this book? Because like the chapters were lessons, and yeah, like I said, they
Yeah.
were contained. Um, but yeah, I just in terms of pacing as well, I felt like it was a bit off with that.
Yeah, because this book to me like had no plot. This was truly like a character driven
Hmm.
book.
Hmm. Yeah.
So like those are typically much slower and like
Hmm.
introspective.
Yeah.
Um, so it's kind of like a denser read. Like even though this was, I think it was like 270 pages, so a
Yeah.
shorter book. It still took me like 2 weeks to read. Like,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So it's to me, it's like one of those books where like you can't judge it by a piece. You have to judge it as a whole.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's how I felt about Hamnet too.
But Hamlet was boring. Like this one, at least it wasn't boring.
I loved it.
I'm so sorry. This one took me like less time to read than Hamnet. But also Hamnet was a bit bigger, but I just felt like it was denser.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because at least like the characters in this were interesting, and there was a lot of like dialogue between the characters. Um, and Hamnet was just kind of like
Text.
stale
Yeah.
and dense. Yeah. Um, but yeah, Angie, what did you think of her?
I thought she was a really interesting character.
Mhm.
And like the quote unquote crime that she committed. And of course, it's going to be a white gay to get her caught up in trouble.
Mhm.
And that was, we noticed it.
Well, wait, what was that part of the story? I don't remember that part. I know
that,
it was towards the end.
yeah, so that was when she was giving like dying men a drug to kill them so that they will
Oh,
die
yeah.
faster.
Yeah.
Um, and basically one of the gays that she took. I don't know why I said it like that.
One of the gays.
One of the gays, one of the white gays that she took in, who was like a dick. Um, Before he was sick, he was like a horrible person who wanted nothing to do with like the culture or like other people in the community. He asked her, like begged her to take him in when he was sick and dying because no one else
Mhm.
would care for him because he like was mean to everyone.
Yeah.
And he dies because she gives him a drug to make him die faster. And
Yeah.
his family like refuses to believe that he had AIDS. Like they are going on that she killed him. So then it was like a legal issue, and
Mhm.
he was going to go to jail for murder because like she kind of did
Yeah.
kill him. But
Yeah. 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 No, I remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
um,
And she was also doing that to other people there, right?
yeah, but
Giving
no, I
the
guess no
drug.
one had like the wealth or resources to like or family to make a big deal out of it,
Hmm.
which is a discussion in and of itself. But the fact that it was a white gays family who like never was connected to Angie or what she did or like the community prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, intentional by the author.
Yeah, but I don't remember how that got resolved. I know that Trey has something to do with it.
It was, I think, Trey with his scheming ways. He like pretended to get a lawyer. He like one of the people that he knew from the like shower club or bathhouse.
Bathhouse, yeah.
Yeah, pretended to be a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
and once they like he made a case basically, and then the family backed off.
Yeah. I
Something like
kind of
that.
remember that being resolved, and I remember at the time thinking it was like a silly resolution.
It was,
It
yeah,
kind
it
of
was
is.
like it was definitely through like Trey scheming and
Mhm.
like luck. But I was just happy to see that Angie didn't have to go to jail.
Yeah, true. True.
Yeah. Like she was a mean person often, but I feel like how could you
It
not be
was
with
tough love.
yeah, with everything that she like had seen and gone through, like how could you not be a bitter, mean shell at
And
first?
she wasn't like, yeah, she was like mean, but she was also caring because she was like opening up her doors to
Yeah,
everyone, and she was
yeah,
like taking all of these sick people and letting them die in her care, basically. So yeah, it was just, I guess, a hard exterior to face her conditions and what she
yeah.
was seeing. So I do understand her.
Yeah, I she's interesting, and I hope like I do you remember of her and Trey like how they left it? Like, are they gonna be like lifelong best friend? Like,
No, I don't remember how
yeah,
that.
I feel like that's how it kind of left, but I don't remember either.
But I'm guessing so. Like he
Yeah,
saved her ass, so like.
yeah. The last thing I see is Angie telling him, "You're a goddamn angel. Don't ever let
Mhm.
anyone tell you different." On
Yeah,
270.
yeah, it makes sense. Like he helped her, so.
Oh, you know what it was? You know what it was that killed that stopped the case?
What?
It was the guy that Gregory was sleeping with, the politician.
Oh, yep, yep,
Trey
yeah,
blackmailed him and then got
yeah,
abandoning Trey or Gregory.
yeah. It's still a silly resolution.
Like that's how American politics is. So
Yeah.
it's like he finally used the connections he had and like abandoned a brother to do so to save a
Yeah.
sister.
But then Gregory was mad at him because of that, right?
Yeah, rightfully so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was messed up, but like,
It was.
right? I do think Trey made the right decision, but I also think like Gregory, he did like betray Gregory to do so.
Yeah. Some things had to be done.
Yeah, poor Gregory.
I think this would be a good movie,
Yeah,
don't you think? Or like a TV show or something. Yeah.
HBO.
Yeah, HBO, call up Rashid. Let's make it happen.
You and I direct.
Especially because I don't know if you have it in the back as well, but he's a TV writer. So I guess that's why like the book is so easily adapted to
Oh
TV.
yeah.
So I guess it would make sense that he would want to turn his book into a TV show. Maybe he's already doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think it would be interesting. But yeah, overall I did like it, but I don't know. In terms of pacing, in terms of the footnotes, in terms of story, there were some things that it just didn't click with me. But I'm really glad you liked it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have anything else that you want to highlight?
That was it, really. We
Yeah.
went through all my quotes.
Also, I love this cover.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. So beautiful.
So simple, but like they nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to think if I have anything else to say, but I don't think so. So I guess our next live show will be
December.
sometime. Yeah, probably December, and maybe we'll round out all of the books that we still have left because we still have a lot of things pending. So first of all, for October, Vampires of El Norte, right?
Yes.
Do you have that book with you? No.
It's in my room.
Okay, good. You don't have to go that one for October. Then TJ Power has something to prove for November. Then December is the Book of Mother. And yeah. And then for our nonfiction Baddies Book Club, we still have 2 books pending as well, right? So it's What My Bones Know.
Yes.
And Wordslot. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know if we'll do all of those books in one live show. I think maybe that will be
That's a
a
lot.
really long,
Yeah.
really long live show. So maybe we'll do one for the 20 something book club and maybe one for the nonfiction baddies, or we'll just split it into months.
We'll decide later.
Yeah, we'll have to work that out. But we're gonna do some live shows in December. That's all you need to know. And we still have a lot of books to discuss. So we really hope you guys can tag along for our next discussions. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Thank
And
you,
we'll
Kit
see
Kat,
you.
for organizing.
What?
Thank you, Kit Kat, for organizing this, getting everyone out there.
Yes. This is all because of this little
Yeah.
lad here.
Who works
Oh,
hard.
yeah. He does. He looks so cute. But yeah, anyway, goodbye.
Bye.